Hello all, and I am back again for the 4th week in a row. I'm actually pretty chuffed with myself for doing this as consistently as I have, and I'm actually in focus today, which is rather miraculous. I don't think I'll ever be able to talk about a show as long as Legend of the Galactic Heroes 2 weeks on the trot, that's for sure. So I thought I'd just rewatch something short and enjoyable. That show being the 11-episode gem Eden of the East, or東のエデンif you feel so inclined. Without any further dilly-dallying, Eden of the East aired in the spring season of 2009, was produced by those top-notch folk at Production IG, and was written and directed by Kenji Kamiyama. What is it about then, eh? I'll tell you. Don't worry about that. On November 22nd, 2010, 10 missiles strike Japan's major cities, but due to unexplained circumstances, not a single life is lost. This incident is dubbed as Careless Monday, and drums up massive suspicions of conspiracy in the public. The show itself begins 3 months later on February 13, 2011, when we are introduced to our main heroine, Mori Misaki, who is currently on holiday in Washington DC. She is a complete genius and gets stopped by the police when caught throwing something at the White House. Then out of nowhere, an obscene naked man carrying nothing more than a pistol and a mobile phone jumps out to save Saki from the bobbies. They escape the attention of police, and we find out that this crazy naked man has amnesia, has no idea why he's naked carrying a pistol and a phone, why this phone has 8.2 billion yen loaded onto it, and even what his own name is. Following directions on this phone he has, he eventually finds his apartment, clothes himself, and nabs a passport under the name Takizawa Akira in the process. Some amusing incidents ensue, but to cut it short, Akira and Saki fly back to Japan together, and on their way back they learn of a new missile incident, this one claiming the lives of a plane full of people. Upon arrival back in Japan, it soon revealed Akira is involved in a game of death between 12 individuals known as Celestial, who are granted possession of these magical money phones, each originally carrying 10 billion yen. The only real rule of this game is to use the money they're given to try and save Japan, and all losers, as well as those who spend their entire allotted balance before Japan is saved, are to be killed. So from here on out, the show's about unfolding the mystery surrounding Akira's lost memories and his potential involvement with the missile incidents, as well as uncovering the real truth behind the Celestial game. From start to finish, the show plows through a great deal of content with a very non-stop feel to the pacing. There's always something important going on, and this leads to each episode flying by without an opportunity to look away. This, in combination with its already very short length, gives a huge feel of urgency to the story and leaves a lasting impression on the viewer. A major component that influences is the very interesting way of dealing with conflict between the Celestial. Now, the main way to spend money with the Celestial phone is to call up this benefactor called Dewey's. So when conflict does arise, it involves them trading blows back and forth between the actions they ask Dewey's to undertake. This felt to me like a really original way to do battle in a war with no direct contact, and while made certain episodes deliciously memorable. There is a great deal that happens in the show, but during its length of 11 episodes it does not wrap things up at all. I generally hate mentioning last episodes and endings, but though the ending you're given is satisfying and often very good, it also leaves a massive to be continued. Now, I have no real intention whatsoever of reviewing the 2 follow-up movies, but all I can say is that they leave a lot to be desired. This isn't to say they are bad by any means, they just don't live up to the huge expectations I had of them after the quality of the series. Now, it is pretty stupid to let it happen, but this led me to think less of the series as a whole, and I can absolutely say I enjoyed the show a great deal more the first time through without the movies in the back of my mind. I will leave it at that though, as the story of the original 11 episodes you're given is pretty incredible. And one thing I think needs to be brought up at this stage is the relevance of the name. So, Eden of the East is this mobile phone app created by the core group of characters, and without a doubt the most offensive breach of privacy I think I have ever seen, not to mention a stalker's dream. Where's my phone? Come here, phone! Ah, telephone! Waha! So what you do with this app is hold your phone up to an object or a person, and it will do an image search imaging through its server and tell you various things. So it can simply be, this shoe is made by this brand and stuff, or it can be, this person is called this, they live here, and go to this school. Does that not just sound horribly iffy to you? It's certainly cool, and I'm not knocking it as part of the show's fiction, but I'm pretty glad it does not exist. And whilst we're staying on the theme of the app, we might as well talk about those who designed it. As aside from Saki, Akira, and the other Celestial, they are the main group of characters we deal with throughout. Starting with the guy who wears glasses, as we always should, we have the closest thing they have to a leader in the form of Hirasawa Kazuomi. This guy's main goal in life is to create a paradise for NEETs, and he's a fairly likeable chap, really. Conversely, we have Satoshi Osugi, who I find to be a fairly unlikable chap, as he's one of those jealous types and has an unrequited love for Saki. Next up is Michon, who's a tiny little lady who loves computers and is nervous, and it's generally very fun to watch her do her thing. There's some other lady too, but I've forgotten about her already. More importantly, rounding off the group in more ways than one, is the genius hacker Yutaka Itazu. This guy has the nickname Pantsu because of a method of reading his name in kanji, but mainly because he became a shut-in NEET after his trousers blew away in the wind a few years before the show starts. He is pretty amusing, I am not going to lie. One of my favourite characters in the franchise by far. Alrighty then, back onto our hat-wearing heroine, Moro Misaki. Yeah, let's go. Gonna start talking about Saki now. She's a pretty normal Japanese lady. Her parents are dead. She's in her last year of uni and looking for a job. Yeah, I can't really think of all that much to say about her, really. She's not a badly designed character, she's just not all that interesting. I must admit she's fairly adorable, but she feels in no way like the kind of person to get involved in anything without being dragged into it by someone else. This is most apparent in how she deals with Akira. She's certainly a very kind person, it leads to her being sucked into his issues by being unable to keep the guy out of her head. This is mostly down to the sheer amount of charisma and mystery surrounding Akira though, because the guy is pretty damn cool. Just from his physical design alone, he feels like a revolutionary figurehead. I can imagine they had someone like Che Guevara in mind when they slapped that banging green coat on the guy. From the moment he's first introduced, he's consistently making these snap decisions to do ballsy and outright crazy things. He's able to resolve certain situations with copious amounts of gratitude and often leaves you going, yeah, this guy. His ideals really work with me, though he is doing what he can to try and regain his lost memories. He's not hung up on trying to act like who he was beforehand, he's just aiming to do the right thing at the right time. I honestly think the show would fall flat in so many places without the charisma this guy has. Takizawa Akira is Eden of the East. So I briefly just mentioned what I thought of Akira's design, but the show's design as a whole is definitely something. Now it takes a lot for an anime these days to have its own distinct style that separates it from everything else, and to me Eden of the East absolutely achieves that. It's mainly down to certain design features differing from the norm enough to be recognisable, like them noses. Check out them noses. Those are some pretty great noses. Noses. This style, coupled with some nice animation for the most part, makes this all around a very appealing show to look at, I must say. Now note I said for the most part. This is the first time we've come across this in a show I've reviewed, so I'm just going to let you all know something as it shows up far too often these days. I hate bad CGI anime. And I know a lot of people do. It just looks awful, it's so blindingly obvious when it's there and it makes it feel like you're watching a cutscene in a bad PS2 game. So in Eden of the East, CGI shows up on vehicles, which doesn't look too bad. Then it also shows up on crowds and background characters, and oh my god, look at that man's arm! That is hideous! I know I've just zoomed in on a background, but it still bothers me to the core for some reason. Like, if you watch my Tsukihime review, I mentioned them using a lot of flat static images in the background. I don't like that either, but it looks way better than some gangly generated thing waving around on the screen. I abhor CGI being used like this. I know it's cheap and anime costs stupid money to produce, but hey, it never used to be like that, right? That's enough of that though. Let's talk voiceover. Unsurprisingly, there are no real complaints from me here. Certain characters had average performances that I didn't find memorable, but there was nothing really wrong with any of it. On the flip side, certain other characters, particularly Akira, had remarkably good voice acting, and this really aided how much I enjoyed their time on the screen. So this, coupled with a wide array of great music and sound effects, left me very satisfied with how things sounded. Loved the ending as well. Of course the music, but also... Apple stop motion, anyone? I had a great time with Eden of the East both times I watched it. As I mentioned before, the movies left a major downer on me because they could have been so much more, but this is a review of the 11 episodes that started the franchise, and it is a show I will always rate highly regardless. Really accessible and highly recommended. Eden of the East gets a rather delightful 88% from me, and I think you should go and watch it. To finish up then, Eden of the East is licensed by Manga Entertainment in the UK and can be purchased on DVD and Blu-ray in both a standalone release and as a definitive collection direct from them at the links down there. And it is licensed and streamable by Funimation Entertainment in the US of A. With this season finally drawing to a close, I shall be looking at a few shows right after they're finished airing over the next few weeks, so do be expecting some hot modernings in the near future. I will. See you next week.
Are you Japanese? I need to see your Johnny.
This is weird.